As for Allah's name Al-Khabir, it is from the names of Allah the Exalted. The meaning of this name, when you look in its application of how it's used in ayat, is that He is the knower of the existence and the substance and the core and the quintessence of everything and its true reality. Whenever the word Khabir is used among the creation, though, for the creation, this only has the attribute that someone has knowledge of something. So someone will be Khabir by exerting effort to find out information regarding the inner workings of something. But the knowledge of Allah is all equal, and there is nothing hidden from Him. There is nothing that may hide. All is clearly exposed, and all is brought to bear. When the Exalted One is said, there is no harm upon you, men, in that which you've intended of from proposing to the women. This ayah is a direct reference to whoever intended to marry a woman coming out of the iddah. And it is for the person that's reflecting and considering without having exposed their true feelings. It is an indication by speech, and it is an allusion to what is truly intended, although the person speaking it cannot come straight out. The khitbah, in this case, the word khitbah means seeking marriage by proposal, like a message which it has a beginning and an ending. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he has said, the ta'reed here, the seeking of marriage here, means that someone says, indeed, I want to get married. Or in this case, when the woman has completed her iddah, Mujahid says, it is allowable that the man might say, indeed, you are beautiful, you are noble, you are beautiful and good to me. Close quote. So in the case of when the woman has finished her iddah, look at what Mujahid has said. The proposal of marriage here is the equivalent of when someone is saying, you are beautiful, you are good, or you are pleasing or beautiful to me. These are the type of proposals that were brought forward. Sometimes it's forgotten that you had people among the companions that proposed to women in the marketplace, or when there was a gathering around the Prophet ﷺ of women who he was teaching. A man walked by and sat and proposed to a woman, or he asked the Prophet ﷺ permission to marry a woman. These are things that are there where he said, I consider her noble, or I consider her good, or I consider this woman beautiful, or what have you, or I think that she is good, or what have you. These are things that were there, that existed. And so these Imams, like Ibn Abbas and Mujahid, who is his student, is giving us the boundaries of what may be said and how far we may go when we give a proposal. So you have examples of what Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, where he said, I want to get married, or I want to get married to you. You have Mujahid radiallahu anhu who said, you are beautiful, you are good looking, or I see good in you, I think you are good for me. These clean, basic, shari'i titles, to where things are clarified, because this is after the iddah. 4 months and 10 days has passed. This is after the iddah. Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he then says, quote, so when the Exalted One says, there's no harm upon you men in that which you intended of proposal to women, or that which you concealed in yourselves, or that which you put away in yourself. It means that when someone has put away thoughts in their mind and they intend something, They are considering. They are reflecting. And when Allah said, and Allah knows that you shall indeed remember them, Mujahid has said, what that means is he will remember that woman in himself because he is intending. And when the Exalted One says, but do not promise them anything in secret tones, but with righteousness. Now there are four things to this that are being referred to. One is that do not promise the nikah until it is time. And we look at the words of Allah where He said this exactly. Because nikah, you do not make nikah a secret. Do not promise them in marriage while they're in their iddah, because this has explicitly been forbidden. Do not say these things except you only say to them righteousness and goodness. So you are not to mention sexual intercourse or marriage when they are in their iddah. The intent has to be careful. While one may make allusions, one cannot speak forthrightly because of the iddah. So it would be permitted for him to say to her, indeed, you are noble. And please consider not marrying anyone other than me. When we are told to avoid anything secretive, it's also referring to fornication. As said by Al-Hasan Al-Basri, Jabir ibn Zayd, Abu Majlis, Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, Qatada, and Ad-Dahaq. Fourthly, you're being told, do not marry these women in their iddah secretly. So then the affair then becomes exposed later on. But rather, you should speak words of righteousness. So when you seek such women, you should seek them with righteousness by contacting them and speaking carefully or with allusions, or contacting her wali and stating that you seek her hand in marriage. Close quote. So in this particular case, you're looking at the woman that is in the iddah, who is mourning the loss of her husband. If someone should say, please consider my case, or a man married to you is fortunate indeed. These type of allusions or expressions will at least leave something in the mind. Now the question is, well, when would a man possibly be able to state this to a woman? Because obviously the day that her husband has died, that is a bit fresh. That's a bit early. You have to look at the timings. You have to consider and use your wisdom. But while she's in her iddah, if he gives a sidelong reference to say, I'm sorry to hear what's happened with your husband. I hope that, inshallah, the affair will be better for you later. Your husband was a fortunate man indeed, and you leave it. That leaves an allusion to a possible proposal later. And then after her iddah has finished, then he states his purpose outright, either to her or to her wali. Either to her or to her wali, because you can find plenty of examples in Bukhari, Muslim, and other hadith collections where men approached women and proposed outrightly. They knew they had walis, but they just proposed outrightly. This is not impermissible. It's valid. You might get in a lot of trouble for it, but it's permitted. It's not impermissible the way that some people gather families together and they meet and things. That's not impermissible. Where people say, well, the family will arrange it. That's not impermissible. But neither is the man that says that is a noble woman and proposes to her on the spot. That's not impermissible either. It may scare the sister, it might worry her, it might jar her, it may shock her, but it's not impermissible because we find examples of this. And we find plenty of texts that establish this. So when you're in that iddah period, the man has to use statements that are allusions to other things or hints. But when he's outside of the iddah, he may be forthright. But whatever words he speaks has to be with righteousness. So it can't be with fornication or sexual intercourse or despicable things like this. He has to speak righteousness. And he can't marry them secretly, right? Or in her iddah. Now this is a common problem that I have ran across here. You'll find in London men that will marry because a sheikh, and this is in quotation marks, has told them, yes, it's fine. And so they marry the woman in her iddah. Or they marry the woman to the man during her monthly cycle. And these are all things that are mawani', they're impediments to marriage. You don't marry a woman when she's having her monthly cycle. You don't marry a woman when she's in her iddah. You don't have secret relationships and then say, well, we'll get married later. Allah has said, don't do any of these things. So there's a wisdom behind all of this. And so when the Imam now brings us to the next point, that if you intend anything from them and so on and so forth, then we understand the wisdom behind all of this. Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he then says, quote, and so the Exalted One has made the matter clear, and he has told us how we are to behave in this regard. And when the Exalted One has told us regarding establishing and having firm intent on marriages, or having firm intent on how we are to conduct our marriages, Allah the Exalted, He tells us in very clear words the following words. وَلَا تَعْزِمُوا عُقَدَةَ النِّكَاحِ حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْكِتَابُ أَجْلَهُ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ فَاحْذَرُوهُ وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. And do not determine to contract a marriage until the end of the prescribed period is reached. And remember, Allah knows what is in your hearts, and He is the most forgiving and the most forbearing. When the Exalted One says, do not determine to contract the marriage, it means that you should not try to contract the sacrament of marriage during this time, until the prescribed period has been reached. This means that it is not to be done until the actual time of the iddah has been completed. Sometimes in Arabic, because the word kitab in Arabic can mean fard. Because when we look at the ayah, حَتَّى يَبْلُغَ الْكِتَابُ أَجْلَهُ, until the fard has reached its time, this is used in other places in the Quran. Look at where Allah the Exalted says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامِ. It has been written upon you the fasting. Surat Al-Baqarah, ayat 183. But what this actually means is, fasting has been made fard for you. Because kutiba and similar expressions using the same root as where the word kitab or book comes from signifies something being made compulsory, being set down, being made law, being made clear and open. So the meaning of this is, do not determine to contract a marriage until the fard time period has been completed. And that means that her iddah has finished. And this is the understanding of Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Al-Sha'abi, Qatada ibn Da'ima, Al-Sudai, and others. And Allah the Exalted said, and you should know that Allah knows what is in your hearts. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, He knows what is in your hearts regarding what you are trying to fulfill. So beware of contradicting and opposing Allah in His affair. And Allah is forbearing because His speech has been made clear. So remember this affair. The Exalted One says further, لا جناح عليكم إن طلقتم النساء ما لم تمسوهن أو تفرضوا لهن فريضة ومتعوهن على الموسع قدره وعلى المفتر قدره متاعا بالمعروف حقا على المحسنين. And there is no harm upon you if you have divorced women that you have not touched and you have not appointed for them their bridal gift. Provide for them the bridal gift with fairness, and provide fair means, according to their means. And those who have less are to be provided for according to their means. This matter must be handled correctly and with righteousness. And this is a right that is to be given by those who work righteousness. Surat Al-Baqarah, ayat 236. When Allah the Exalted has said, there is no harm upon you when you have divorced women that you have not touched, this expression requires explanation, and it requires further elucidation. The reason why this ayah was sent down is because there was a man from the Ansar, the helpers, who married a woman from the Bani Hanifa tribe, and he did not appoint for her a full mahr, and he divorced her before he had touched her. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, did you leave a share for her of anything? The man said, well, no. The Prophet ﷺ said, well, leave her share, even if it's simply a qalanswa in which you wrap the amama around. The meaning of this ayah means that by not touching them and not appointing for them a farida, the bridal gift. Now, touching here means sexual intercourse. And the word farida used in the ayah is the bridal gift. This ayah establishes that it is permissible to contract the sacrament of marriage without specifically naming the mahr, although it is there. So Allah is saying, وَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ, and give them their mahr from your wealth according to their means, whether rich or poor. And the means here is whatever someone takes benefit from. So the wealthy shall have whatever is wealthy for them, and the poor has whatever is seeming and good to them.